وصلى الله على محمد وآله وفوض أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد فوقاه الله سيئات ما مكروا لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إن كنتم من الظالمين فاستجبنا له ونجيناه من الغم وكذلك ننجي المؤمنين حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل فانقلبوا بنعمة من الله وفضل لم يمسسهم سوء ما شاء الله لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله ما شاء الله لا ما شاء الناس ما شاء الله وإن كره الناس حسب رب من المربوبين حسب خالق من المخلوقين حسب رازق من المرزوقين حسبي الله رب العالمين حسبي من وحسبي حسبي من لم يزل حسبي حسبي من كان مسكنت لم يزل حسبي حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا وقد قال أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب عليه الصلاة والسلام اللهم إني قد مللتهم وملوني وسئمتهم سئموني فأبدلني بهم خيرا منهم وأبدلهم بي شرا مني صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. A little too dark, isn't it? Inshallah, continuing with our discussions on Nahj al-Balagha, I shared with you the last and the third portion of khutbah number 25. So we discussed the first two parts of the khutbah. The first part was a complaint about the weakness of the people of Kufa. We discussed some aspects of that, so I'm not going to repeat that. The second part that we discussed was disobedience to the rightful imam that Imam mentioned. And then the last section, which we are inshallah going to discuss today, the curse upon disloyal companions. So let's get right into this. Imam alayhi salatu wasalam right away says, "Oh Allah, they are disgusted of me, and I am disgusted of them." Look at the level of disappointment and frustration alongside with it. Right? Imam saying, "I'm disgusted with these people. They are weary of me, and I'm weary of them. Change them for me with better ones, and change me for them with worse ones." We'll explain what does that mean. Change them for me for better ones, meaning, in other words, give me better companions than them, and them for me, worse than me, meaning Imam is not bad, but give them the worst of the leaders. Give them worst of the leadership. You've heard this. When a nation fails to perform Amr bil Maruf Nahi Anil Munkar, we were talking about the other day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places upon them a ruler which is Jabir, for example, or Zalim, for example, right? So those things are the Imam is making that sort of dua. So Imam begins by saying, I'm weary of you, and openly declaring to these people. Now, if you remember, the displeasement of Imam is emerging from their lack of intent in Yemen. Of course, it's been a while since we've had this discussion, so it may not be in your minds, but Imam was disappointed when, people of Muawiyah had attacked Sham, and he had taken over the leadership over there, and they had disposed Imam's appointed governors over there, and all that thing was happening. Imam ﷺ, and now he's in Kufa. He just goes up and he lets out all of his frustrations from in front of these people in this sermon. So in this third and the final passage of the sermon, Imam's heart is filled with sorrow and grief. He turns to the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course. He's not going to turn to another people or another group of people or another, pseudo leader that is out there. Imam turns to Allah. He curses these people, but it is a curse meant to awaken them and warn them. It's not like, in a fight when someone is cursing another individual, that curse is merely out of the anger and, defeat, want to throw the defeat to that individual. For example, if there was to be a fight, and there shouldn't be any, swears, curse is different. Imam is sending la'anat upon them, which is permissible. But even that la'anat is, derogatory. Imam is using this to what? To awaken them, to draw their attention toward, intended for those in whom a spark of conscience may still be alive. Not all of them have dead hearts. There's still some of them among them where still there's a zindagi ki ramak baqi hai. There's still their spark of life is in them. So if Imam says these words, harsh words, it might just awaken them, bring them out of their slumber. Perhaps through this, he may bring them to awareness and guide those lost in the valley of misguidance back to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For the Imam's curses are also admonitions, moral lessons, and calls to awaken. So he right away says, Allahumma inni qad maliltuhum wa malluni wa sa'imtuhum wa sa'imuni. O Allah, I have grown weary of them, and they have grown weary of me. I am tired of them, and they are tired of me. The feeling is mutual. It's not like one way that I'm like this. No, they are growing tired of me as well, because I keep on pushing them. I keep on asking them to do this, to move forward, to let go of these worldly things, to come to the path of, being God-fearing and all that stuff. I keep on telling them that. Maybe they have gone, weary of me. They've become tired of all that I have said. They no longer want to listen to me. This is because despite all my advice and admonition, he says, despite all of my admonitions and heartfelt sighs, their cold-heartedness and their cold hearts remained unaffected. I've given this example before. We hear the hadith of Aimma, and we hear the hadith of Rasulullah, and what comes to our mouth right away? Subhanallah. And it affects us. You hear something for the first time, because there are many things that we haven't heard, in a different way from the kalam of Rasulullah, from the kalam of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Oh man, I was not aware of this thus far. Subhanallah. And it affects you. But Imam Hussein said in the field of Karbala that, O people, majority of them were Kufans, what is wrong with you? This is your Imam speaking to you, one-on-one, without any intermediaries, without anyone in between us. Directly speaking to you. What's wrong with you? And then Imam responds, yes, you will not have any effect of my words. So you and I, when we hear the kalam of Imam 14 centuries later, we feel affected. And we like to adopt and we like to practice it. But if Imam is saying to you directly, then imagine the effect of that. But there were people right there, who wouldn't have any effect. And then what did Imam conclude by saying? قَدْ مُلِعَتْ بُطُونَكُمْ الْحَرَامِ. Your bellies are filled with haram. The moment your bellies are filled with haram, you're not going to have any effects of any good. Regardless, even if the Imam himself was talking to you directly. So this is where the lesson lies. Tomorrow when Imam reappears, and if we have gone down the same path, we will not have any effect of Imam's words either. Just the same way people didn't have effect on the words of Imam Hussein, you and I would not listen to Imam over time. This is the reason. So it is clear that when there is no harmony between a leader and his followers, in their goals, in their morals, in their intentions, a great problem arises. Imam here sees that there's no harmony between me and you. You're in different world, I'm in a different world. Tried my best, but we're not able to get on the same page. Where a just, wise, and a courageous leader stands before the followers who are worldly, who are weak, incapable, and ignorant, and his advice bears no fruit to them. This leads to the leader growing weary of these people, and the followers also growing weary of the leader. Sheikh Sadi also adds something to it. He says, Sad chandan ke dana ra az nadan nafratast, nadan ra az dana wahshat. He says, as much as the wise detest the ignorant fears the wise even more. He said, if you are weary of us, do not sit with a frown, for you too are a bitterness among us. So the mutual understanding in this regard. And if the Prophet of Islam, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was able to take up on the leadership of these ignorant tribes, imagine where they were. They were drowned in their worldly affairs. But Rasulullah came, he was able to revive them, he was able to tame them, train them, bring them together, leaving their practices of jahiliyyat aside. Rasulullah was able to. That was a big miracle. Leading a group of people who were drowned into, you name it. There's no culture there. There's no civilization there. There's no, harmony. These people are bloodthirsty. They fight over small little arguments and they take each other's lives. This is a society which buries their daughters alive. This is a society which doesn't have any social norms. Yet Rasulullah comes and he was able to implement that will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala onto these. It was because of what? Because they accepted his training and revived the character traits of Rasulullah within themselves. For this reason, those prophets who were not granted such success, there were many prophets. Hazrat Yunus became weary of his people, left. He said, Allah's curse and adhab will come upon you. Other prophets as well. Hazrat Lut tried his best, but of course they wouldn't listen. And then Allah told him, "O Lut, leave, because adhab of Allah will come." And the biggest example, Hazrat Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam. 950 years of constant tabligh, yet, he sees that people are still, within his own family, his own son and his own wife, they won't listen to him. So of course the adhab followed after that. So there were many who were not granted such success, grew weary of their followers. They said, we don't want anything to do with you. We'll leave and we'll send the curse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon you. And the followers also in turn could not bear their presence. We've forgotten that the people of Prophet Lut, who were completely immersed in corruption, expressed disgust toward the great Prophet for the very reason of his chastity. This is another element. When Nabi of Allah is trying to help, and you all remember the corruption of the people of Hazrat Lut. He tried his best. He did everything he could. Still they didn't listen. He went to the extent offering his own daughters in marriage. Who does that to these corrupted people? But he wanted to bring them out of their corruption. They wouldn't listen. You know what these people said to Hazrat Lut? This is the mindset. Innahum unasun wama kana jawab qawmihi إلا أن قالوا أخرجوهم من قريتكم إنهم أناس يتطهرون. The people of Hazrat Lut said this: expel Lut and his followers from your town, for they are people who seek purity and do not agree with us. So, impurity and corruption has gone to the level where they can't stand those who are purified people. Is it these purified people? They have no room in our town. Kick them out of here. Why? They keep on preaching us. They keep on telling us, don't do this, this is haram, don't do this, this is haram. Kick them out of here. Innahum unasun yatatahharun. They're agreeing that these are purified people. Ye log pak aur pakiza hain. On the other hand, we are corrupt. There's no room for them over here. Then Imam curses. So this was the wamakana. And then Imam curses them in these words: فَأَبْدِلْنِي بِهِمْ خَيْرًا مِّنْهُمْ وَأَبْدِلْهُمْ بِي شَرًّا مِّنِّي. Oh Allah, replace them with those who are better for me, and replace me with someone who is worse for them. For they are not worthy followers for this leader, nor am I suitable leader for such followers. Of course, Imam is in this maqam showing humbleness, right? The utmost level of humbleness. Of course, Imam is a fit leader for any group of people. If Imam Ali is not a fit leader, then who would be? Of course, in terms of implementing the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in terms of ruling by the book, right? By the Sharia, Imam is the fittest of the leaders. But Imam here says, I'm not fit for these people. The wisdom of the Lord dictates that not that they have emerged from the furnace of trial and disgrace. Remember the levels of disgrace that they had gone to. This divine blessing should be taken away from them. Me as a leader for them was a divine blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I came here to them to guide them. This is a divine blessing from Allah. Take this divine blessing away from them. They don't deserve this anymore. So they may suffer the pain and the loss of its absence. When you lose a great leader, and I'm sure in our lives we've seen that as well. Many great leaders who were with us, who are no longer with us, who brought about change in our lives. And when we lose them, we feel this emptiness in ourselves. And how quickly Imam's words were, put into manifestation. Right away, Imam's curse and his dua is implemented. The Umayyads, they came with their ruthlessness, stone-hearted, criminal agents were set over them for 83 years. 83 years. Laylatul Qadr khayrum min alfi shahr. Alfi shahr is how many years? 83 years. Some reference the Umayyads' rule is khayrum min alfi shahr as the 83 years that they ruled. From the time of Imam's shahadat until the year 129, 130. That's when the downfall of the Umayyads came about. So how quickly Imam's curse came to pass, the Umayyads, they were set over them. What they did to them has history, rarely seen or recorded. Just one example of that, among the astonishing things reported in Islamic historical sources, is that the very time when Imam pronounced these curses, this is probably towards the end of Imam's life, 40th year after Hijrah, for example, or just prior to that, Imam Shahadat. When Imam announced this or pronounced these curses, shortly thereafter, Hajjaj ibn Yusuf was born. And we all know Hajjaj ibn Yusuf. In the 41st year after Hijrah, Hajjaj ibn Yusuf is born, and in the 95th year after Hijrah, he is Wasil Jahannam. Of course, even before Hajjaj rose to power, the people of Iraq and Kufa were already paying the price for their crimes, but under the rule of Hajjaj, the suffering reached its peak. The amount of Safakiyat, the way they killed people ruthlessly, left and right, just for being followers of Ahlul Bayt, just for being the Shia and Ali, Haidar Karrar. He would call people, ask them to curse Amir al-Mu'mineen, ask them to leave the path of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Such, great personalities as Kumail ibn Ziyad, these companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen who were closest to him, they came about. Of course, the next line that Imam says, after saying to Allah that Allah change them for me, meaning give me better than those, وَأَبْدِلْهُمْ بِشَرًّا مِنِّي. It is obvious that Imam, the meaning of this phrase is that, it's not that I am evil, for example. Imam is not saying that they are evil, so replace them. And at the same time, I am evil, so replace me. No, that's not what Imam is saying. Imam is not evil. And someone who's worse than me should be placed over them. That's what Imam means. Rather, it is an expression that is also used in comparisons between absolute good and absolute evil. In Surah Furqan, we read this ayat. It says, قُلْ أَذَلِكَ خَيْرٌ أَمْ جَنَّةُ الْخُلْدِ الَّتِي وُعِدَ الْمُتَّقُونَ. Is that hellfire better or the eternal paradise? Of course, what is the answer? Eternal paradise. So why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is associating the term, is the hellfire better? Using a positive, sifat for the hellfire. There's no positivity about hellfire. If there's anything, it's all negative. Imam ﷺ is doing the same comparison over here. Just like hell is absolute evil and paradise is absolute good, Imam is absolute good and these people are absolute evil. This type of rhetorical comparison does not imply any deficiency on the part of the speaker that Imam ﷺ is lacking, but rather serves to contrast the outcomes of the righteousness and rebellion. In other words, neither the Kufans and the people of Iraq at that time were good, such the Imam would ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala someone better to replace them. In fact, Imam went to the extent by saying, I would trade 10 of theirs, or I would trade 10 of mine with one of theirs. One of Muawiyah's people, give me one of them and I will give 10 of mine. In another place in Nahj al-Balagha, we'll come to that eventually inshallah. Imam said, I'm ready to trade my 10 companions with his one companion. If there isn't any insult, this is the biggest of the insults. I'm ready to trade. Give me one of yours and take 10 of mine. Why? Your one is stronger than 10 of mine. How so? He said, these 10 know that I am haqq. These 10 know that I'm divinely chosen. These 10 know that you are batil. Yet they're still weak in their heart. Your people, on the contrary, they know you are cunning and evil and batil. But with all of that, they're still very loyal to you. I don't have that loyalty. So I'm ready to trade. Even for my 10, just your one. So Imam ﷺ, he uses this in such context. The superlative form loses its usual comparative meaning and is instead used to contrast two opposing realities. Imam is speaking them to be the worst, and Imam saying that I'm the worst leader for them as well. Allah replace someone who's even worse than me in this case. So Imam's curse, in truth, is similar to the curse mentioned in Quran from the great divine prophet Hazrat Nuh, Rabbi la tadhar ala al-ardi min al-kafirina dayyara. My Lord, leave not upon the earth any dweller from among the disbelievers. Then Imam comes to the last couple of sentences I'll go through quickly. He says, Allahumma mith qulubahum kama yumathul milhu fil ma. Oh Allah, melt their hearts as the salt melts in water. Now, this analogy, Imam gives examples which are very easy to fathom. You put salt into the water, you're making salt water, how quickly it melts. It is possible that the intended meaning of the melting of hearts refers to the overwhelming assault of grief and sorrow upon them, so intense that it deeply wounds a person's emotion. A lot of time when people go through this sort of trauma, and even if it's something which is positive, something which brings happiness, but there's trauma associated with it. After giving birth, there's trauma for some ladies, and in other areas as well of life, post syndromes that people have, that could be so intense after certain incidents. Someone loses a loved one, someone's father dies, and right away that transforms that individual, for good or bad. But nonetheless, there's that deep impact. Emotions take over you, and this intense, that is deeply wounds a person's emotions. The heart has melted, Imam said. It is evident that the melting of hearts refers to a loss of intellect. That these people have lost what? Their aql. If they had little bit of aql remaining, they would not turn against me. But this is where it shows that they have lost their intellect, their reason, their insight. In essence, the meaning of the sentence is, take away their intellect, their understanding due to their disobedience, their hypocrisy, their duplicity, their negligence, and obstruction of justice as well. They've been doing all of that. Look at Imam's grief, his sorrow. He's seeing all of that. And then, people claim that Imam ﷺ did not say a word in the first 25 years of his silence. Yes, primarily it's his silence. But Imam was openly criticizing the policies, and he was openly criticizing the khilafat of the first three. As we mentioned in khutbah number 3, khutbah shaqshaqiyya, those words were very clear that they were speaking of the emotions of Imam ﷺ. This expression appears frequently in both Quran and as well as in ahadith, where the word heart or qalb that Imam uses over here is described at the center of intellect and comprehension. When Allah uses the word qalb, it does not mean this organ right here which is pumping blood. That's not what it meant. Qalb refers to aql. Qalb refers to your soul, your nafs. All of this could be the references made toward qalb. So there are examples. I won't mention those examples. Then Imam, towards the end, in the final lines of this sermon, Imam ﷺ expresses a heartfelt wish that instead of being surrounded by a large army of weak and unreliable men, he had a small number of the tribe of Banu Firas. So there was a tribe, Banu Firas, there's a history which is there about him, who were known for their bravery and their loyalty. Imam ﷺ, when he was searching for a brave son, he asked Aqil, who led him to Bani Kilab, and this is where he married Fatma bint Hizam Kilabiyya. And so similarly, there were other brave tribes who were known for their valor. Imam ﷺ makes this wish. He says, I wish that I had a small number of people, yet they were from the tribe of Bani Firas. He said, Amma wallahi lawadittu anna li bikum alfa farisin min Bani Firas ibn Ghanam. He said, by Allah, I would have loved to have in place of you 1,000 horsemen from the tribe of Banu Firas ibn Ghanam, a tribe which was known for his bravery. So with their help, I could put the enemies of truth and justice in their place. You're no good. You have obviously shown that you're not good enough. I would rather trade you with 1,000 men from Bani Firas. Then Imam ﷺ recites a verse of poetry in praise of this group of people. He says what? He says, هُنَالِكَ لَوْ دَعَوْتَ أَتَاكَ مِنْهُمْ فَوَارِسُوا مِثْلُ أَرْمِيَةِ الْحَمِيمِ. If you were to call upon them, horsemen would come to you like a summer storm clouds, swift and forceful, and they will not hesitate for one bit to go ahead and do whatever you want for them to do to you. Similar sentiments are mentioned in Farsi as well. It's like the fast-moving dry cloud, impatient and restless in pursuit of the enemy. Then Imam concludes the sermon and he descends from the pulpit. There's a hashia in over here by Syed Rizvi, which I will skip for the brevity of time. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give us the tawfiq to understand the kalam of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq and ability to act as the words of Ali are still, full of wisdom for us and could be implemented easily in our daily lives. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the reappearance of our awaited Imam and give us the tawfiq that when he does reappear, that we are his sincere followers and we listen to the commands of Imam alayhi salatu wasalam. Wa akhir dawana